All right. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Kurt Kelberg, and this is Matt Cole. We're both integration engineers at PayPal. Just an announcement real quick. We did get an email notification shortly ago that the pins that were announced earlier, those will be given out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So, our agenda for today, we're going to be going over email payments as well as the request money and the invoicing tool. We also have our website payment standard, which includes our PayPal button factory, where you can create our different button types. We have our Buy Now button, donations, subscriptions, automatic billings, and the installment plan. And we'll also be covering the instant payment notification. So why use email payments? Well, it is one of PayPal's simplest payment solutions. All you need is an email address and a PayPal account. And PayPal handles the rest. It's a basic form you fill out, you click continue, and you're done. There's no coding required, which means you don't need an email address, or you don't need a website. There's also no PCI compliance issues. The transaction flow is actually handled on PayPal's website, so there's no need to worry about PCI compliance. It also comes in two flavors. There's the request money and the invoicing tool. So, the request money. This is ideally situated for when both the buyer and the seller know each other or have a pre-existing relationship. Some examples of this could be maybe paying the babysitter or paying the paperboy, or a scoutmaster collecting money for an upcoming camping trip, or maybe collecting money for a group outing or lunch. So here we have the form for the request money. As you can see at the top, you have an option to put in the email address of the requester as well as the amount. Very simple. Hit continue, takes you to the next screen, confirms the details. You have the option to type in a subject to the recipient as well as a quick message. So when that recipient receives the email, here's what it looks like. You have your details across the top as well as a Pay Now button on the bottom to complete the transaction. So the invoicing tool. This is used ideally for where more detail is required in the transaction, such as line item details and whatnot. This is ideally situated for business to business or business to consumer payments. It can replace the traditional paper invoice. And like I said, you can include line item details, shipping, and tax on the transaction. Some examples for this would be maybe a contractor invoicing for services or goods rendered, maybe collecting payments for a phone or mail order, or maybe collecting doctor's office bills. So here we have the example of the invoicing tool. What you'll notice different about this one is it will have your business name across the top. It gives you an option to type in a street address as well as a phone number in case the buyer needs to contact you for any reason. Then you have the email address, which is the same. You can type in the amount. You also have the option for the subject and the note to seller. So on the bottom here you can see the line item details. There's also a spot for shipping and handling as well as tax. Here's what the recipient receives in their email. You can see all the details for the invoice, and again you have the Pay Now button at the bottom to complete the transaction. So after the payment, both the buyer and the seller will receive an email communication letting you know the transaction has been completed. In the merchant's account, the status of the invoice or the request money will actually show as paid, and the funds will typically be available immediately. So now we're going to head off into Website Payment Standard, and I'm going to let Matt Cole take over from here.
Hello everybody, my name is Matt Cole. I'm an integration engineer with PayPal, and I've been with PayPal for about a year now. So Kurt just talked to you a little bit about email payments, and email payments are going to be handy for situations where there's already a commitment to buy from the buyer. So the buyer owes you money, they've already committed to buying your product, or the product has already been delivered to you, and you need to collect the money from them. But suppose that commitment's not already in place. Suppose that you just want to put up your product for sale on your website and you want to have people come to your website and buy your product. This is where Website Payment Standard is going to come in. So Website Payment Standard is PayPal's hosted payment solution. What this means is that the entire checkout process is hosted on the PayPal website, so you don't have to worry about going and creating your own checkout process. Really about the only thing that you need to do is put some HTML code or a link on your website. This is going to be specially formed HTML code or a specially formed link, either provided to you by PayPal or coded on your own. Now, for those of you that are going to be using a shopping cart or developing your own shopping cart, PayPal can integrate with your shopping cart, but if you don't have your own shopping cart, that's fine. We can accommodate you also, so it can be used either way. With Website Payment Standard, there is no coding required. Again, you can code for it if you want to, but if you don't know how to code, then that's fine. PayPal can provide you with all the code that you need. There's no API calls to worry about. You technically don't even have to have a website, although it does really help to have one. And again, because PayPal hosts all the checkout pages for you, there's no PCI compliance issues. Website Payment Standard can handle merchants of any size. So whether you're the mom and pop that's selling 1 to 2 products a week on your website, or you're the Walmarts or the Best Buys of the world that are selling 10,000 products a day, Website Payment Standard can accommodate you in either of those situations. And Website Payment Standard does come pre-integrated with many popular shopping carts that are out there already. So, for example, OS Commerce, ZenCart, Magento. There's also several hosted payment solutions such as Miva, Mal's e-commerce. So again, that's going to take a lot of the work away from you right there. Website Payment Standard does cover a variety of different payment scenarios. So whether you're just doing a single item purchase, you can use a Buy Now button for that type of situation. So suppose that you're an author and you're just trying to get your new book out on your website, and that's the only product that you have on your website. Buy Now is going to be perfect for you. We also have an Add to Cart button. So suppose you're a candle vendor and you have 100 different varieties of candle that you sell on your website, and your buyers need to be able to mix and match them in any order. Add to Cart is going to be something that will help you there. PayPal will keep track of all the items that the buyer has clicked on and added to their shopping cart, and PayPal will take care of charging them all at once for everything after they're done shopping. Donate. So suppose that you're a charity trying to raise money for your organization. Donate's going to be handy there. Gift certificate buttons. We do actually offer you, as the merchant, the ability to sell gift certificates on your website. Subscriptions for recurring payments. Automatic billing and installment plans, which I'll go into here in more detail in just a couple minutes here. So now I'm going to go into the PayPal Button Factory. The Button Factory is going to be the tool on the PayPal website that you can use as the merchant to go and set up any one of these buttons that I just talked about. It's accessed by going to the Merchant Services tab in your PayPal account. So the example that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a Buy Now button. So I'm going to start off by clicking on where it says Buy Now button there. The next page that I'm going to get is just going to be a simple form. It's going to ask me for the name of the item that I'm selling, the price of the item. You can't see it, but if I were to go farther on down the page, there's also going to be options for you to add in things like shipping and tax, inventory tracking, profit and loss tracking. So there's several tools available to you there. And when I'm all done, what's going to happen is PayPal is going to spit out the HTML code for me. At that point, all I have to do is I just have to take that code, copy and paste it onto my website, and I am up and running. Now, PayPal does also generate what's called email code. And email code is going to be handy for situations where maybe you can't put the HTML code up on your website. So we actually provide that to you as a URL that links directly to the PayPal website. Again, it's going to be useful anywhere where HTML code isn't allowed. So, for example, email blasts. There's still a lot of email clients out there that don't display HTML, or maybe the security settings are set not to display HTML. Email blasts are going to be perfect for that sort of situation. Facebook. If you're just setting up a simple store, or you just want to provide a link on your Facebook profile for people to purchase your item, you can just take that email code and paste it directly up to Facebook. Or the other example is maybe you're using a free hosting service. In my work, I've known a lot of free hosting services to disallow the use of some HTML code, or maybe they'll mangle it to the point where it doesn't do what it's intended to anymore. One important factor to keep in mind is that PayPal only generates the email code if there are no drop-down menus or text boxes on the button. So if I were to back up here to the previous slide, what you're going to see is down here there's an option to add a drop-down menu or a text field onto the button. And I can use that, for example, if I'm selling a T-shirt and I need to be able to show the different sizes of my T-shirt, I can add on a drop-down menu to accommodate for that. The email code doesn't really allow for drop-down menus to be on there, so the email code, again, only gets generated if there's no drop-down menus or text fields on there. Now, here what I have is an example of the HTML code for a PayPal Buy Now button. And this is HTML code that I wrote up myself. So if I wanted to have my own custom integration with Website Payment Standard, this is an example of how I can do this. And this is going to be handy for situations where maybe you need to go a little bit above and beyond what the PayPal Button Factory offers you. So, for example, what I have on here is I have a text field where the buyer can punch in their own amount for the purchase. Or I have another text field where the buyer can punch in the quantity for their purchase. We also have a special field on there called invoice. And PayPal does offer that feature to you for situations where you don't want the buyer to pay more than once for a particular invoice ID. So a good example of this might be a doctor's office that's sending out a bill. The doctor's office can include an invoice ID on that bill. The buyer punches that into that invoice field there, and what's going to happen is if the buyer tries to pay more than once for that particular invoice ID, PayPal is going to stop them the second time. It's going to come back and say, you've already paid for this invoice, you can't pay for it again. Now, for manually coded buttons, there's a few extra parameters that I have to include on there. So I have up at the top there, I have a value called CMD, and that tells PayPal, what are we doing with this buyer? Are we sending them to their account, or are we sending them through a checkout purchase? What are we doing? And I have that set to _xclick, which is going to be the equivalent of a Buy Now button. So that says, okay, when the buyer comes over to PayPal, we need to send them through the checkout process. I also have a field on there called business. This is going to be another important parameter because this tells PayPal where the money is going to be going from this purchase. Who's getting paid for this purchase? Now, normally what this is going to be is the email address on the merchant's PayPal account. In this instance, what I've done is I've done something that's a little bit more secure and a little bit more hacker-proof. And I have used my secure merchant account ID. Any merchant can go into their PayPal account and get their secure merchant account ID. It's displayed on the profile summary page in your PayPal account. And obviously, this protects me from hackers being able to figure out what the email address of my PayPal account is. And then I also have item name, which is going to be the name of the product that's going to show up on PayPal when the buyer goes to buy the product. Now, for those of you that are writing your own shopping carts, we do also have a feature called Shopping Cart Upload. What this allows you to do is this allows you to take the line item details that are displayed in your shopping cart and transfer that information over to PayPal. PayPal then records that detail on the transaction, so anywhere that the buyer or the seller goes and looks at the transaction, all of those line item details are going to be on there. So again, I have my CMD value, which is set to _cart. I have a value called upload on there, which is set to 1, which tells PayPal that I'm going to be uploading the line item details to PayPal. And then I just go and list off my items. So I have item name 1, amount 1, quantity 1, and then I just repeat that for each additional item that I have. Now, just like the email code that you get from the PayPal Button Factory, your manually coded buttons can also be written as a URL. So I have a simple example here. This is generally going to be better for shorter requests because there is a character limit on how long your URLs can be. So obviously, if you're in the sort of situation where you're using the shopping cart upload feature to send 50 items over to PayPal, you're probably going to hit that limit. And some of your items are going to get cut off, and your buyer may not get charged for everything that you're trying to charge for. So it's usually better for things like single item requests, like what I'm showing here. If you want to have a little bit cleaner redirect process over to PayPal, it's actually ideal for use with your 302 found redirects. Now, PayPal does also offer you the ability to take donations on your website. And these are going to be for situations where you're collecting money from a buyer, but you're not necessarily expecting anything in return for, your buyer is not necessarily expecting anything in return for that payment. Now, with donation buttons, typically the buyer is going to specify how much they want to give because it's a donation. But if there is a reason for you to only take specific amounts, you can specify that amount also. The process of creating a donate button works pretty similarly to creating a buy now button, and the checkout process does also, but without a lot of the bells and whistles. So things like shipping and tax are not going to be included in that. Inventory control, profit and loss tracking, things like that are not going to be available on a donate button. And then here I have a sample of a donate button. So again, I've got my CMD value in there. It's set to _donations. Now, PayPal does also offer the ability to take subscriptions. This is going to be useful for situations where your buyer needs to be billed on a recurring basis for an amount that doesn't really change over time. So an example might be a magazine subscription. Or maybe you run a website and you have a section of premium content that you want to be able to charge your buyers a monthly access charge to get to that portion of your website. Or any sort of monthly service provider, maybe like the garbage company. Now, PayPal does offer you some flexibility in how you bill the buyer. So what does that mean? First off, we do offer you up to 2 trial periods. So I'll go back to the example of maybe a provider that's providing some premium website content. I can choose to charge $6.99 a month for access to my website. But maybe I want to run a special, and the special is going to be free for the first 2 months, and then $3.99 for the next 3 months after that, before the regular billing amount of $6.99 starts. That is something that you can do with Website Payment Standard. Billing periods can be specified in days, weeks, months, or years. So you can choose to have your buyer billed once every month, once every 3 days, once every 2 weeks, once every 5 years. Now, during the last year, one of the new products that we did introduce is called Enhanced Recurring Payments. Normally with subscriptions, your buyer does need to have a PayPal account, and that's to provide your buyer some control over their subscription. So if they want to go in and cancel their subscription, we allow them the flexibility to go into their PayPal account and cancel that without having to contact the merchant first. With Enhanced Recurring Payments, your buyer does not need to have a PayPal account. Now, one of the important points to remember about subscriptions here is that PayPal is going to initiate the payment, not the merchant. What does this mean? This means that if you're setting up a subscription for a buyer on a monthly basis, that means that when 1 month comes up, PayPal is automatically going to charge the buyer for the subscription. The buyer nor the merchant need to do anything to make that payment happen. PayPal takes care of that automatically. Automatic billing. This is another new feature that we introduced with the Enhanced Recurring Payments package, so it does require you to enroll in that. It is free right now, and then I believe on the 1st of January they're going to start charging $19.99 a month for that service. Automatic billing is going to be for situations where you have a buyer that needs to be billed on a monthly basis, so it's going to be good for service providers. But it's also going to be handy for situations where the amount that they need to be billed is going to fluctuate from month to month. So an example of this might be a utility company. Obviously, every home uses a little bit different amounts of electricity or gas or water each month, and your bill is going to fluctuate because of that. Automatic billing allows you to go in and say, this is the charge that for the electricity that this customer used this month. Another example might be a cable TV provider. Suppose you rented some pay-per-view movies during the month. Or a cell phone service provider. Suppose that you went over your allocated minutes for the month, or you sent maybe a few too many text messages. Now, with automatic billing, Your buyer goes to the PayPal website and specifies the maximum amount that they are willing to pay each month. You as the merchant have some room to say this is the minimum amount that they can set here, but your buyers are going to say what the maximum is that they're willing to pay. And each month, the merchant can go into their PayPal account, pull up the automatic billing agreement, and bill the buyer for up to the maximum amount. Now, the important point to remember here with automatic billing is this is going to be the opposite of the subscription tool. So with automatic billing, the merchant initiates the payment, not PayPal. This means that once a month, the merchant needs to go into their PayPal account and specify how much is going to be charged to the buyer. If the merchant does not do anything, the buyer does not get billed. And then the last feature that we introduced with enhanced recurring payments is installment plans. Again, this does require the enrollment in the enhanced recurring payments package. This allows a buyer to pay for an item in installments. So suppose that the item that you're selling is a little bit outside of the income range of your target market. You can break it up into installments and make it a little bit easier for your buyer to pay for. The installment can be completed in a maximum of 4 payments over the course of a year at most. And the merchant has the flexibility to specify what the amounts of each of those payments are going to be. The merchant can specify how far apart those payments are going to be, but again, it has to be completed within the space of a year. Now, lastly, one of the questions that I get asked is, so Matt, I have a payment that completes on my website. I have a back-end process that I need to start when this payment completes. How do I get notification of that completed payment? This is where instant payment notification is going to come in. Instant payment notification is a service that allows you to fire off automated process when a payment completes. And how it works is PayPal will post the details of the transaction to a script on your site. So what you do is you go and you write an instant payment notification handler. You post it up to your website. You give PayPal the URL for where that script is on your website. And anytime a transaction happens, PayPal is going to post the details of that transaction to your script. Now, this notification is done independently of any actions taken by the buyer. So as long as the payment completes, PayPal is going to try to deliver that IPN notification to you. So regardless of whether the buyer leaves the PayPal website and never comes back to your website again, if they close out their browser, again, as long as they actually completed the payment, that IPN notification is going to be sent to you. IPN does include a built-in retry mechanism. So suppose that maybe there's a network outage or your website goes down all of a sudden and PayPal's not able to deliver that IPN message right away. IPN does include a built-in retry mechanism. We'll try several times over the course of a few days to try to get that IPN to you. And then lastly, it's instant payment notification is what we call an asynchronous process. So that means that the timing for when that IPN notification comes back to you is not going to be absolute. Generally, it's going to happen within a few seconds, but it could be a few minutes. Depending on conditions, it could be a few hours. So by the time the buyer comes back to your website from PayPal, that IPN notification may have made it to your site, it may not have. So that's it. That's my presentation for you guys today. The main points that we hope you take away from this are that email payments and website payment standard are the 2 easiest solutions that PayPal has for taking payments. They're the 2 solutions that take the least amount of time to set up, and they're the 2 solutions that have the fewest compliance issues. There's no coding required with either email payments or website payment standard. If you're using website payment standard, remember that the PayPal button factory can write all of the code for you that you need. Again, there's no website required. It does help, but it's not required. And there's no PCI compliance worries because PayPal hosts all of the checkout pages for you on our secure sites. And then lastly, both are going to cover a variety of payment solutions. All right. Any questions from anybody? Oh. Wait for the microphone to get up to you.
Let's say you have recurring billing and you want to synchronize the billing dates. So you don't, someone buys something and then later on they buy something else. But maybe I just want them to be billed in one transaction after a period of time instead of billing them, every 30 days, $5 here, and then 15 days later, $5 here for a different type of transaction. Can I synchronize those easily, or am I going to have to use an API?
So you're talking about a sort of situation where a buyer might come into your website and subscribe to your product that's maybe say $5 a month, and then maybe sometime later they come back and they subscribe for another product which might be another $5 a month.
Sure.
So you want both of those billings to happen at the same time. There is a feature that we call resubscribe. That basically allows the buyer to update the subscription that they already have with you for new billing terms. So that is a feature that you could use to basically go and update the subscription that they already have for the new price. And it is going to require that the buyer goes over to the PayPal website to approve the new terms.
So I had a specific question regarding integration. I thought my understanding was PayPal Website Payment Standard allows both HTML and API integration. Is that?
Yes. With Website Payment Standard, there are some APIs that you can use, but they're mainly going to be related to the button factory as far as creating buttons and.
Right, and that was my question here specifically. So with the APIs, are there functionality that I should be aware of that using the APIs I can't use for the button factory generator?
Most of the same functionality is going to be available through the button factory. The one feature that comes to mind right offhand that's not available through the button factory is going to be digital download keys. So this is a feature that I believe we introduced sometime during the past year. I don't remember the exact date. But what it does allow you to do is you can upload a set of keys to the PayPal API for your product, and then whenever you have a buyer that goes through the checkout process and buys your item, PayPal will take one of those keys that you have listed in your account and give it to the buyer for that product.
For the invoicing tool, I notice you have multiple line items. From a use case scenario, do you support the notion of parallel payments? Like a use case would be you're doing a home and a rental, and there's a charge for the rental, but then there could be additional services offered by different merchants for insurance, cleaning, and the way you'd like that from an atomic standpoint is if one of the transactions failed, you want the whole thing rolled back. I was wondering how sophisticated you can get with the invoicing tool.
For the most part, the invoicing tool is just going to be a one merchant, one buyer sort of relationship. You can split the invoice up to be sent to multiple sellers. So if you have 5 different sellers that are all buying the same product, you can split it up and have it sent to those 5 different sellers. But you can really only have the money sent back to one merchant at a time.
You mentioned there was a fee for automatic billing.
Yes, as part of the enhanced recurring payments package.
So that's per month for that
yes.
merchant?
Mm-hmm. $19.95 a month, I believe, is what they're charging for that.
And if the merchant, like you mentioned before, utilities, and this is going to be used for bill payment, is there some type of fee or interchange structure that's different for bill payment than standard merchant services?
So you're asking if there's a separate fee for the payments that are made through the enhanced recurring payments?
Well, a separate fee structure. So if I'm a biller and I didn't want to take a credit card payment because of the interchange, and do you have any type of separate model for a bill payment versus e-commerce?
No. Not at this time, no. They're all charged the same fees.
Okay.
To mention that on the website we have a document that describes a whole lot of detail about the product's website payment standard, and we just touched upon the possibilities here. There's really a whole lot of options that are available, and if anyone's interested, the document can be downloaded and like I say, has a lot more detail.
Yeah, yep. Obviously, Website Payment Standard does have a lot of different possibilities that I just didn't have time to touch on here. My presentation during the dry runs here actually ran overtime, so I did have to clip a little bit of content out to make it fit within the time. But yes, there is a lot more information that we have up on x.com about Website Payment Standard, how you can use it and what you can do with it. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you for coming out, everybody.